The topic I'll be discussing today is the Alberta tar sand dilemma. To start off, I will be discussing some background information on the topic, such as what the tar sands actually are. The oil sands or tar sands are a type of unconventional petroleum deposit that contain naturally occurring mixtures of sand, clay, water, and a dense and extremely viscous form of petroleum technically referred to as bitumen. Oil sands are found in large amounts in many countries throughout the world, but are found in extremely large quantities in Canada and the northern coast of South Africa. Oil sand reserves have only recently been considered to be part of the world's oil reserves, as higher oil prices and new technology enable them to be profitably extracted and upgraded to usable products. The tar sands are also the leading energy resource in the world. Next, I will discuss some positive outcomes. Overall, oil sands development benefits all Canadians through employment opportunities as well as generating royalties and taxes that help pay for government services and programs. The benefits to Albertans: about 136,000 Albertans are directly employed in the oil and gas extraction and mining sectors. That's one of every 15 jobs in the province. Royalties from the oil sands were $1.9 billion in 2009-2010. This is Albertans' share of the revenue from oil sands and production and helps fund many public services. The benefits to Canadians overall. The Canadian Energy Research Institute estimates oil sands will create more than $307 billion in tax revenue across Canada over the next 25 years. Nearly 61%, or $187 billion, will go to the federal government. Alberta companies have signed millions of dollars in contracts in companies throughout Canada to support activity in the oil sands. Oil sands development creates jobs outside of Alberta. 23% of oil sands related employment is outside the province. That rises to 28% for construction related jobs. Investment: the capital investment in the oil sands is estimated to add up to $218 billion over the next 25 years. And how this helps the Alberta economy? Well, Alberta has seen the highest rate of economic growth in Canada over the last 20 years. Now for the negative aspects. Greenhouse gas emissions. The Alberta tar sands are the fastest growing source of greenhouse gas emissions in Canada and stand as the single greatest obstacle to Canada meeting its global climate change responsibilities. Producing a barrel of tar sand oil emits 3 times more greenhouse gases than producing a barrel of conventional oil, making the tar sands oil some of the dirtiest on the planet. If current development plans proceed, by 2020, the tar sands will release twice as many greenhouse gases as are currently produced by all the cars and trucks in Canada. Second, the overall resource usage. 2 tons of soil sands are needed to produce 1 barrel of oil, roughly 1/8 of a ton. Just one of the 4 operating mines in Alberta has excavated more soil than the Great Pyramid of Cheops, the Great Wall of China, the Suez Canal, and the world's 10 biggest dams combined. Tar sands extraction utilizes enough natural gas to heat over 3 million homes in Canada. Its rapid depletion of natural gas is not only hastening the return to coal for domestic heating and power generation, but is also driving Canada's so-called nuclear renaissance. Canada may well become the first nation to use nuclear energy, not to retire fossil fuels, but to accelerate their exploitation. Now for some environmental concerns. Industrial development of the scale of the Alberta tar sands could push the boreal ecosystem over its tipping point and lead to irreversible ecological damage and loss of biodiversity. About 90% of the water used to process the tar sands ends up in acutely toxic tailing ponds that line the Athabasca River and threaten the health of the whole river basin. For every barrel of oil extracted, 6 barrels of tailings are produced. And according to the recent Environmental Defense Report, the ponds are already leaking over 11 million liters a day of contaminated water into the environment. Should proposed projects proceed on schedule, 2012 would see a 5-fold increase to 25 billion liters a year. To end off, health concerns have become a pivotal issue. as downstream Aboriginal populations are experiencing increased respiratory diseases, rare cancers, and cardiovascular problems, suspected to be caused by toxic substances that have leached downstream from tar sands production. So, what do the people of Alberta think? Well, according to the article, environmentalists, natives, and unions denounce biocidal oil sands policy from the Globe and Mail. There are two major problems associated with the Alberta oil sands. The first issue would be the fact that the oil sands cause pollution, water, and upfront energy needed to extract, which many repercussions have occurred from this, such as the cancer rate in Fort Chipewyan, which is higher than expected, and many people there blame the giant energy extraction project. The other concerning issue directly related to the Alberta oil sands is the massive pipeline project that, if approved by Washington, would transport 700,000 barrels per day of bitumen from Alberta to the Gulf Coast refinery hub in the United States, thus killing jobs in Alberta because processing will be done in the United States. To end this presentation, I will give my own personal recommendations to help solve some of these overwhelming issues. First, mandatory government audits. Putting into place mandatory government audits would enable greater levels of transparency and would allow for better accountability with research and analysis of the tar sands. Second, restrict governments from granting tax incentives/subsidiaries. By restricting governments from providing any tax privileges to oil companies, there will be more revenue that can be channeled into developing cleaner forms of energy. And lastly, enforce mandatory panel meetings. Enforcing mandatory panel meetings between oil companies and activist organizations would allow for further discussion, cooperation, and overall insight on how to approach the tar sands and its place within the future. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you.